God, we just thank you for this chance to worship you in song. We thank you for this chance to worship you through your word. God, I pray that you give us ears to hear, minds to understand. I pray that you give us just hearts to seek you and to submit to you, to obey you, to love you, to cherish you more than all the other things that we could chase after in this life. God, I thank you that the characters that we meet in your word are just dumpster fires. Because it's just such a comfort when we see our own flaws and when we see our own struggles to know that that's not unusual in a fallen world. And yet you are just so incredibly gracious to us as you were to them. And God, I just pray that we would see your grace this morning, that we'd be comforted, that we'd be encouraged, that we would just be compelled to run hard after you and to invite other people into the joy of doing the same. Amen. All right, so we are kicking off a series in Genesis. For those of you who are a little bit newer here, we often work through whole books of the Bible, but when we get like super long books of the Bible like Genesis, we don't do it in one go. Instead, we'll break it up. Genesis, we're starting a series that's going to be in Genesis chapter 27. Pete read from 25 because I wanted you to get a little bit of context. That's not what we're preaching through, but there's a lot of parallels, a lot of similarities. We kind of needed that context, and you know how long I'm going to preach, so you didn't want me to give you all of that as well. But what we're doing, like so far in Genesis, is probably like our fifth or sixth series going through this book. And we'll spend some time in Genesis, then we'll spend some time in the New Testament, then we'll go back and forth, some of that sort of thing. So we're picking up in the middle of the book, and we're at the point in the book where it's the main human character at this stage of the story is Jacob. And things are going to develop to kind of show you what's going on in his life. We're calling this series The Blessing of a Scoundrel, because that's just kind of who Jacob is. And if you've been around for the other Genesis series, you're like, yeah, I think Abraham was a little bit like that. And I think Isaac, he kind of had some issues too, right? And they did. And the thing about Jacob, though, is that it's not only that the apple didn't fall far from the tree, but the apple, I don't know, rolled down into the ditch and rotted just a little bit more. Like Jacob's got even more issues than the rest of his family did. And yet God chooses him and God uses him, and ultimately God transforms him from this selfish, mostly faithless fool into a guy that increasingly reflects God's glory and that God can use for his purposes in the world. And so, that's just kind of the theme of the series, that God chooses and he uses and he blesses and he transforms selfish people like you and me. And that's wonderful. Like, that's just something to be celebrated. So as we start this morning, I want you to imagine with me a little bit of a crazy scenario. Imagine stealing something that you already have. Okay? Imagine stealing something that already belongs to you. So where do we do our banking? I'm a Chase guy. What do you guys got? Is it PNC? Is it something else? Come on, this is easy. This is easier than saying amen. Maybe it's confidential. Maybe you want to call out your neighbor's bank. I don't know your password. Okay, you guys just aren't participating. Anybody? Chase? You okay? Oh, I got to stop talking to hear you. You got to get loud with me. Okay, what else we got? Fifth Third. Yeah, that's one of those odd mergers. Everybody wants their name kept. What else you got? Wells Fargo. Okay, there's banks out there. So imagine you got this bank account and you're loaded. Imagine you got $1 million in your bank account. And this isn't a new bank account. This is a bank account you've had for a while. You've been depositing your checks for a while. You've been, withdrawing your monthly bills. You got auto pay going on. You got your debit card. You got your username, your login, all that stuff. This is your bank account. Life's good having a bank account that's just so full of money, right? Now, imagine one day you just get it in your head like, I can't believe that Chase or Wells Fargo, I can't believe they've got their hands on my money. And you just get it in your head, unless I grab a gun and go down to the street and put it in that teller's face right now and get my money back, those guys are going to keep my money. And you just feel like the only way that I can get what's mine is if I steal it. Okay? So you do it. Oh, well, you're about to do it, but then you realize, robbing a bank, there's some complexity here. Every TV show I've ever seen, it's not one guy that robs a bank. No, you need an accomplice. Like you need a lookout man, you need some help. So you're like, well, who's going to help? It needs to be somebody close. It needs to be somebody I can trust. So if you're married, you ask your spouse. If you got a roommate, you ask your roommate. If you're a parent and you're like, my spouse probably won't go for this, kind of like when you want to have like extra dessert or, just do something is kind of dumb, but you want to do it anyway. Maybe your spouse isn't going to go for it, but your 8-year-old would, So imagine you realize if I'm gonna get what's mine, if I'm gonna really have what's mine, I gotta go take it, but I need my 8-year-old's help to go take it. Okay, so now you are ready to risk not only your life and freedom, but your 8-year-old's life and freedom to get what it is that's really yours, right? Okay, let's make the scenario a little bit more messy. Let's imagine you're not gonna rob nameless, faceless PNC Bank. Imagine if you really want to get what's yours. The place you're going to get that is mom and dad's house. So you and 8-year-old Johnny, you're going to grab your guns, you're going to grab your crowbars, you're going to go in the dead of the night, and you're going to rob your mom and dad's house. And if it gets messy, if it gets violent, it doesn't matter because this is yours. And you're going to get what's yours. Now, it doesn't matter that your parents are like the most generous people in the world, and they've made it clear, hey, whatever I have is yours, and whatever you need, you just let me know. It doesn't matter that they let you treat them like your own private ATM, and that they've told you, I'm leaving it all to you anyway. Not even leaving it to your siblings. I'm leaving it all to you. None of that matters. In this moment, you and Johnny know that if you're going to get what's yours, you got to go steal it in the dead of night from mom and dad. See, you set off with your crazy scheme and you get it done because you want to have what's yours. I know that's ridiculous. That is the kind of story that we're reading today in the Bible. It is that level of stupid. It is that level of crazy. It's that level of wicked. It's just really, really bad. Story that we're looking at today, we got this family of 4. It's Isaac and Rebekah are the parents. They got their twin sons, Jacob and Esau. And again, I had Pete read you a little bit of the backstory, a little bit more backstory for those a little bit less familiar. One of the central characters in the book of Genesis is a guy named Abraham. And it's this guy that God chooses by grace. And what I mean by chooses by grace is that there was nothing really special about Abraham. And certainly there was nothing particularly virtuous about Abraham. Like you read through the story, and if you're expecting virtuous characters in the Bible, you're just so deeply disappointed by Abraham. Okay, but Abraham is declared to be this man of faith. And what that means is that God came to him and he said, I'm going to do some awesome things for you just for no particular reason other than I choose to bless you. And through you, I'm going to bless everybody in the world. And Abraham's like, okay, let's do it. Abraham believed God, and it says that God credited to him his righteousness. Like God's like, if you will trust me, then even though you're so jacked up, I'm going to count you as though you're righteous. And then we got this story where Abraham's wife can't have children, and so they pray, and God promises, I know it doesn't look good for you, but I'm going to give you a child, and through that child, all nations of the world are going to be blessed. And what that means is that through this one child named Isaac, there's going to be another child, and there's going to be another child, and on down through the generations until eventually Jesus comes. And Jesus, the Messiah, who's going to fix everything that's broken in this world, is going to come through that family. And all the nations of the world are going to be blessed through him. So that's like the promise to Abraham. For a minute, Abraham believes God, it's credited to righteousness, but you go through the Abraham story, and Abraham was not a guy who was particularly great at believing God. Like he's known as the man of faith, and yet he has these good days where he believes God and these other days where it's really hard to believe God. And he's like, I really need to take hold of this thing. I really need to manipulate it. I really need to lie and cheat and steal to get the things that God has promised. And that pattern of occasional moments of faith and kind of frequent moments of lack of faith, it cascades down through his family. We see it in Isaac, kind of the patriarch of this generation. And we're going to see it in his kids, particularly in his kid, Jacob. Now, you go through this story and you're like, boy, I feel like Esau might be the better guy than Jacob, and maybe he is. But I think one of the things that's crazy about this narrative is that the more a character gets developed, the more God takes the time to paint the picture of their flaws. And it's like he's just, I don't know, just graciously shouting the message to us, like it's okay to be completely messed up. Like the more I know you, the more I see your flaws, and that's okay. Welcome to Mosaic Church. That's who we are. That's how we are. And yet God chooses us, and God uses us, and God blesses us, and he transforms us completely in spite of us. So it's a family that's choosing to trust God. They lie, they cheat, they manipulate. A lot of the characters do it. Jacob does it the most. We also see favoritism. We also see rivalry, just general selfishness and family dysfunction that flow out of a lack of faith in God. All right? So we're going to be in Genesis chapter 27 today. Again, it's a story with some parallels to what Pete read out of 25. We're going to cover the first 40 verses. We're going to move kind of quick. I'm going to simply walk through the story, and the big idea that I want us to see is this. I want us to see that we do not need to selfishly scheme in order to get life and joy and peace and hope and purpose and significance. We don't need to selfishly scheme to get the things that God has already given us by grace. Okay? We don't need to selfishly scheme to get the things that God has promised and that he's already given us by grace. All right. So early in the story, Pete reads from second half of Genesis 25, where we see the birth of Jacob and Esau. And like Sarah before, Rebekah was unable to have children. God promised. God delivered Isaac. And now there's another prayer for children. And in Genesis 25, God answers another prayer for a son. In fact, he gives two sons. So again, we'll mostly be in 27. I'm going to read just a little bit more from 25 to set it in context. Starting with verse 21. Isaac prayed to the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was barren. She was unable to have children. The Lord answered his prayer, and his wife Rebekah became pregnant. The babies jostled each other within her, and she said, "Why is this happening to me?" So she went to inquire of the Lord. The Lord said to her, "Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger." So God makes his promise to Rebekah. I'm gonna big time answer your prayer. I'm gonna give you two kids, and I'm gonna bless both of these kids. They're your kids. They're descendants of Abraham. I'm gonna bless both of them, but in a culture that always favored the older kid, and they gave all these special privileges to the older kid, and like, yeah, the older kid gets everything just because they're older. In that culture, we see God repeatedly reversing the thing. And throughout Scripture, we typically see God choosing the younger, choosing the weaker, choosing the more messed up person to save by grace and to bless and to use. Okay? And he does the exact same here. He says this unexpected thing that the older will serve the younger. And so he's going to choose Jacob, and Jacob's name, it literally means he grasps the heel. And we see in the story that's something that literally happens in the birthing process. Esau comes out first, but Jacob, he's like right there and grabs on, and he's come out. Yeah, he grasps the heel. But the thing is, in Hebrew culture, that was also a figurative expression that meant that he lies. Okay, so the idea is like, somebody's like walking along, somebody's jogging along, you go down and grab their heel. What are they going to do? They're going to trip. They're going to fall. Like you're hurting somebody else by grasping their heel. It was a figurative way of saying that you're lying to them. So Jacob becomes this in a family that kind of had a pretty serious problem with lying and scheming and cheating and deceiving people in order to try to protect themselves and get what God had already promised them. Like Jacob's going to be the guy who takes it to the next level. And in a family of liars, he is going to be known as the liar. All right. So we know already in the story, and Rebekah knows, and it's almost certain that Isaac already knows, even before these boys are born, that the older is going to serve the younger, that Jacob is going to be the one through whom all of these amazing promises that God made to Abraham and to Isaac and to Rebekah, Jacob is going to be the one through all these amazing promises are ultimately going to be fulfilled to redeem the whole world. Jacob is the one through whom Jesus is going to come. Before Jacob is even born, God has chosen Jacob by grace. Just like we read in the New Testament in Ephesians chapter 1, verse 4, that not only before we were born, but if we were in Christ, then before the creation of the world, God chose us by grace. Okay? Ephesians chapter 1, verse 4, the Apostle Paul writes, "For he chose us in him," again, not just before we were born, God chose us before the creation of the world to be holy and blameless in his sight, meaning we're set apart for him, and he counts us righteous, and he's going to work in us to make us righteous. It continues, "In love, he predestined us to be adopted as his sons." In this passage we're going to look at today, again and again it uses the phrase, "my son, my son, my son." My father, my father, my father. One of the commentaries I think I was reading, the phrase, "my son," like in all of Genesis, it gets used like, I don't know, something like 11 times. 8 of them are in this chapter. My son, my son, my son. There is an intimacy, there is a closeness for these people who God has chosen by grace. And again, we go into the New Testament, and there is an intimacy and a closeness for us who've been chosen by grace. It says to both men and women that in love he predestined us to be his sons. Why sons? Because Jesus is the Son. And Jesus, the firstborn Son, the one and only Son, he is the exalted, honored, beloved Son. And so he compares both the sons and the daughters who are adopted by grace. He refers to us as sons. My son. Because we are loved as Jesus is loved. In love, he predestined us to be adopted as his sons through Jesus Christ in accordance with his pleasure and will, like he just wanted to do this, to the praise of his glorious grace that he has freely given us in the one he loves. So again, what I want us to see in the story is that already Jacob had been given everything, and there was no reason to selfishly scheme, but he chose to lie and scheme anyway. And the rest of Genesis chapter 25, it wraps up with a scene where Jacob exploits his hungry and weary brother Esau. And Esau comes in and it says he's famished, like he's about to faint, or at least maybe he's a drama queen, I don't know. But he's this guy who, he's so exhausted, and he goes to his brother for help, and he's like, "Can you just get me some food? Can you get me something to drink? I feel like I'm about to faint." And Jacob's like, well, this is awesome. Because I got food right here, but I'm not going to give it to you. I'm going to exploit you. Tell you what, sell me your birthright. Which what that meant was in ancient cultures, the firstborn son, they got at least a double share of the inheritance. And that was just kind of their right in that culture. And Jacob's like, "I want what you have. Like, God's blessed me, God's promised to bless me, but I need to take it. And I'm willing to steal it from my brother. You look like you're about to die. What good is your birthright to you? Why don't you sell it to me, and I will give you a bowl of stew." And Esau, being desperate, maybe being something of an idiot, not, whatever, he's like, "Yeah, I'll take the deal." So in that chapter, Jacob completely swindles his brother. And as this chapter opens, he's going to do it again. All right. Genesis 25, Jacob stole Esau's birthright. Genesis 27, we see Jacob steal his father's blessing. Something he could do because his father was blind. All right? Genesis chapter 27, verse 1. When Isaac was old, when he was very old and his eyes were so weak that he could no longer see, he called for Esau, his older son, and he said to him, "My son." "Here I am," he answered. Isaac said, "I am now an old man, and I don't know the day of my death. Now then, get your weapons, your quiver and your bow, and go out to the open country and hunt some wild game for me. Prepare me the kind of tasty food I like, and bring it to me to eat, so that I may give you my blessing before I die." So Isaac is old and his eyes are weak, but as the story goes on, it becomes apparent it's not just Isaac's physical eyes. It's not just that his eyes are weak, it's that Isaac is blind. It's not like some of us who are like, oh, I got to get glasses now, like I can see the first 4 rows of people, but Kyle, and I think that's Kyle in the back. It's not just a little bit of an issue. This guy is blind. Like that becomes totally clear in the story. But what's also deeply insinuated in the story is that Isaac isn't just physically blind. Isaac is spiritually blind. Isaac has lost sight of the things of God. It's unthinkable to think that Rebekah receiving this revelation from God, that the older is going to serve the younger, that the primary blessing and the line through which God is going to redeem the world is going to come through Jacob. She receives this revelation. It's unthinkable that she didn't tell her husband Isaac, especially since Jacob was Rebekah's favorite. We see her advocating for Jacob. So definitely she's letting her husband know, this is God's will, this is God's plan, he told me. But Isaac doesn't care about any of that. He's not like, okay, I know that God's hand is on Jacob and that Jacob is going to be the leader of the next generation, so we're going to move forward with that plan. He's like, no. Jacob's always hanging out with his mom in the kitchen. I've never been able to relate to Jacob. I just don't get Jacob. Like, I'm a hunter. Like I want to go out there and kill things with my bare hands. Like I got a bow and Esau, he's like that. Like Esau was this macho guy. He's described as ridiculously hairy. And again, that's probably not something we look at as virtuous in our culture. But he is the roughneck, redneck, manly man out in the woods doing his thing. And Dad loves that sort of thing, And Dad is just this guy. He is old. He doesn't care about God's will. He doesn't care about God's plan. You know what he cares about? Venison. You don't know what venison is? You know what beef is? Okay, beef's what you get from a cow. Venison is what you get from a deer. Now, I don't know if he's hunting deer. Maybe I don't know what he's hunting. But it's wild meat. And he's like, oh, my boy, just get out there and get me some wild, tasty meat because I love that stuff. I can't see anything. I can't see anything physically. I can't see anything spiritually, but I can smell and I can taste, and this is what I want. So go get me what I want, my boy, and when you do that, I'm going to bless you. Okay? He's physically blind. He's spiritually blind. And that's just not going to go well for him. He thinks his physical appetites are more important than the revealed will of God. And he's willing to bless his son, and by that, it's a little bit mysterious. It doesn't translate into our culture. It's hard to know exactly what it means, but it seems like he is going to essentially invoke God's blessing in some sort of an authoritative way on the son he likes better because that son can fill his belly. So Isaac is physically blind, spiritually blind, and he's not the only one in the story who is spiritually blind. All right, moving on to Rebekah and her deceitful schemes. Well, Rebekah advocates for the son whom God has promised to bless. You could say, oh, well, that's very virtuous. And there's some commentators and scholars throughout the history of the church that they want to kind of whitewash it and make the main characters in the Bible like strangely more virtuous than they actually are. Some say, well, she's advocating for the one that God said he wants to bless, but she's doing it in the worst possible way. Again, by leading her son Jacob into this deceitful scheme to steal Isaac's blessing rather than trusting God to fulfill his purpose in an ethical way. Okay? So again, it's like he has this thing already. And Rebekah's like, hey, let's go rob your dad blind in the dead of the night because we can in order to get what it is that we want. So verse 5. Now Rebekah was listening, eavesdropping, as Isaac spoke to his son Esau. When Esau left for the open country to hunt the game and to bring it back, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, look, I overheard your father say to your brother Esau, and again, like, it's personal. It's not these random strangers, like we don't really know them, they're nameless, faceless, but we're going to exploit them to get what they want. No, this is your daddy talking to your twin brother. I heard him, and we got to go exploit those guys, okay? So I heard him say, look, I overheard your father say to your brother Jacob, bring me some game and prepare me some tasty food to eat, so that I may give you my blessing in the presence of the Lord. This isn't God's will, but we're going to do it in the presence of the Lord before I die. Now, my son, listen carefully and do what I tell you to do. Go out to the flock and bring me 2 choice young goats, so that I can prepare some of that tasty food for your father, just the way he likes it. Then take it to your father to eat, so that he may give you his blessing before he dies. So the scheme's absolutely crazy. The scheme is absolutely wicked. Again, as crazy as breaking into your own parents' house to rob them. But at least Jacob can see that it's crazy. Like Rebecca, she's just deranged. But Jacob, he's going to object a little bit. And he might not object on moral grounds, like, no, I wouldn't want to do that to Daddy. But he's like, Mom, we're going to get caught. Like, this is not a good plan. All right, so verse 11, Jacob says to Rebecca, his mother, but my brother Esau is a hairy man, and I am a man of smooth skin. Like, I don't even need to shave. There is no 5 o'clock shadow here. I can't even grow a mustache, Mom. And you know how hairy that guy is. If my father touches me, and again, when you got a blind dad, like I can't see you, I could still touch you. Like, okay. If my father touches me, I would appear to be tricking him. Yeah, Jacob, you would appear to be tricking him because you are bold-faced lying. And yeah, so it's going to look like you're bold-faced lying, or at least tricking him. It's going to look like you're grasping his heel, just like your name says. If he touches me, it would appear that I'm tricking him, and it would bring down a curse on myself rather than a blessing. His mother said to him, my son, let the curse fall on me. Just do what I say and go get them for me. All right. Now, we said in the previous series that in some ways, Rebecca is more the picture of Abraham in the second generation than Isaac is. And it's kind of back and forth. Like, Abraham gets this amazing blessing and promise from God, and Isaac gets like a more formal, amazing blessing and promise from God. But Rebecca also receives the blessing. And just like God called Abraham, and he left his country, and he left his father's house, and he went to a land that he did not know that God has promised. So in the second generation, Rebecca is this figure who leaves her family and leaves her land to go to a land that God has promised, a land that she doesn't know, and to begin this new life in pursuit of him. And so there's a lot of parallelism. Rebecca is this really central character. And like some people have pointed out in this story, that maybe there's even a little bit of a foreshadowing of Jesus in this, that Jacob recognizes, oh man, I'm going to get caught and I'm going to get cursed. And Rebecca's like, hey, the curse is not going to fall on you. Let the curse fall on me. And again, like some people who want to just paint every biblical character as wildly virtuous, they really emphasize that there's kind of this like Christ-like comparison of Rebecca's offering substitutionary atonement. In the same way that Christ takes our curse upon him and bears the penalty for our sin, Rebecca's like, hey, if this goes south, let the curse fall on me. I genuinely think there might be something there, but there's a lot more difference than there is similarity. Right? Because the curse that we're talking about falling on Jacob's head, it's because he's engaging in the sinful, wicked, exploiting scheme that his mom came up with. You know? The curse that fell on Jesus was not a curse that Jesus caused. Okay? It was a curse that Jesus rescues us from. Rebecca's like, hey, I'm getting you into this terrible thing, and if it goes as worse as it could possibly go, I'll get you out. And maybe not. It turns out, well, their scheme is ultimately going to succeed in some ways. The consequences are just going to be so dire. It's going to jack up all of their lives and all of their family tree. And, you know, sin is going to take you further than you want to go. And it's going to keep you longer than you want to stay. It's going to cost you more than you can pay. And that's what happens to them. All right. So Rebecca's got this crazy scheme. She is committed to getting Jacob on board with this scheme, and ultimately she does. And we go to verse 14, and they start kind of working out the scheme. So Jacob, he went out and he got the 2 goats, and he brought them to his mother, and she prepared some tasty food, just the way his father liked it. Then Rebekah took the best clothes of Esau, her older son, which she had in the house, and she put them on her younger son, Jacob. She also covered his hands and the smooth part of his neck with goat skins. Now, that doesn't seem like it's going to work, right? And like, how hairy is this guy that like a goat skin, whatever. But then again, who in the room actually knows anything about goat skin? I got one. Yes, I see your hand. I see 2 hands. Wait a minute. Okay. We're a little bit more rural than I take account for. You ask these guys afterward, like what exactly is going on with the goat skin neck, and I don't know. All right. She covered his hands and the smooth part of his neck with goat skins. Then she handed to her son Jacob the tasty food and the bread that she had made. He went to his father. And again, this passage, it keeps on saying, his father, his son, my son, my son, my son, my son. He went to his father and he said, my father. And we're supposed to feel how intimate this betrayal is. Yes, my son, he answered. Who is this? Who is it? Jacob said to his father, I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Please set up and eat some of my game, that you may give me your blessing. Isaac asked his son, how did you find it so quickly, my son? The Lord your God gave me success, he replied. This is the part that should make you sick. Like if you have any desire to glorify God with your life, the idea that he would invoke the name of the living God in order to further his deception of his father, of his own daddy. And again, why did he do it? To scheme to obtain the blessing that God had already promised to give him. I'm going to go steal what God has already promised to give me. And I don't care who I have to wrong. I don't care who I have to deceive. I will betray my own daddy and my brother and my God in order to get what God has already promised to give me. Verse 21 continues, Then Isaac said to Jacob, come near so that I can touch you, my son, to know whether you really are my son Esau or not. Jacob went close to his father Isaac, who touched him and said, the voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau. He did not recognize him, for his hands were hairy, like those of his brother Esau. And again, I've never seen paws like that had that much hair on them, but that's how it is. He did not recognize him, for his hands were hairy like those of his brother Esau. So he blessed him. Are you really my son, Esau? He asked. I am, he replied. Then he said, my son, bring me some of your game to eat so that I may give you my blessing. Jacob brought it to him and he ate, and he brought some wine and he drank. Then his father said to him, come here, my son, and kiss me. And again, like if you read through the New Testament, like you can't help but think of Judas betraying Jesus with a kiss. So Jacob went to him and he kissed him. When Isaac caught the smell of his clothes, he blessed him and he said, the smell of my son is like the smell of a field. And some of us city boys were reading this and we're like, what? That doesn't sound good. It's apparently not a manure pasture. It's like the pine forest. I don't know. Like it smells really good. The smell of my son, it's like the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed. May God give you of heaven's dew and of earth's riches, an abundance of grain and new wine. May nations serve you and peoples bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may the sons of your mother bow down to you. So it seems to be this like cultural blessing, something like he's only got one brother, it's in the plural and whatnot, but it seems to be this, the customary way that they would give like the richest of blessing in that culture, and that they would pass on the authority to lead the family to one person. He says, be Lord over your brothers, and may the sons of your mother bow down to you. You are now the head of this family. You have the money, you have the rights, you have the power. May those who curse you be cursed, and those who bless you be blessed. So Jacob got exactly what he wanted, but what about his brother Esau? Verse 30. After Isaac finished blessing him and Jacob had scarcely left his father's presence, his brother Esau came in from hunting. He too prepared some tasty food and brought it to his father. Then he said to him, my father, sit up and eat some of my game so that you may give me your blessing. His father Isaac said to him, who are you? I am your son, he answered, your firstborn, Esau. Isaac trembled violently. So you got this man he's old. He's decrepit. He can't see anymore. And if you can't see anymore, then you can't do a lot of stuff. And your muscles are getting weaker because you're just lying in bed all the time. And, he's nearing death. Oh, but he is angry. Isaac trembled violently and he said, who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me? I ate it just before you came in and I blessed him. And indeed, he will be blessed. When Esau heard his father's words, he burst out with a loud and bitter cry, and he said to his father, bless me! Me too, my father, bless me! But Isaac said, your brother came deceitfully and took your blessing. All along, he's like, man, it sounds like Jacob, and now he pieces it together. It's your brother. Verse 36, Esau said, isn't he rightly named Jacob? Isn't he rightly named deceiver? Esau continues, he has deceived me this 2 times. He took my birthright, and now he's taken my blessing. Then he said, haven't you reserved any blessing for me? Isaac answered Esau, I have made him lord over you, and have made all his relatives his servants, and I have sustained him with grain and new wine. So what can I possibly do for you, my son? Now you read through the rest of the book of Genesis, and you look at what Abraham did. That the primary blessing went to Isaac because that was God's revealed will, but he blessed Ishmael. He had other kids like later in life after his wife had died, and he took on another wife, and he took care of all of them. Like he didn't give absolutely everything to Isaac. He just, in keeping with God's will, he said, Isaac is the one through whom the promise is going to come, and the greatest blessing is going to go to him, and he is going to be the head of the family, even though he wasn't the oldest. And then you go through Jacob's kids, and Jacob's got like 12 sons, and boy, is that a dumpster fire. You think that there's rivalry and that there's, infighting and deception and all that stuff in this small family of 4? Well, when it gets bad, okay? But when it comes time to bless, all 12 of those kids get a blessing. And some of them, Jacob's like, man, they thought I was a scoundrel when they were reading the story, but look what you did, and you're not going to get as much blessing as that guy. And, there's some of that going on, but he spreads it out. And he makes it clear, okay, Judah, you're the one through whom the king's going to come. But you're not the only one who's going to be blessed. So Isaac, he had the opportunity that he could have divvied up the blessing a bit because God said both are going to be blessed. And ultimately, God's will is going to prevail regardless of what Isaac says. But again, Isaac, he's this guy who's not just physically blind, he's spiritually blind. He doesn't care about God's revealed will. He's like, I want my blessing to go to the manly man who knows how to hunt and to get me food that I like. That other boy of mine, I don't know what's wrong with him, but he's just always hanging out with his mom, and Esau's my guy. I'm giving everything to Esau. And because of his favoritism, because of his spiritual blindness, because he was more interested in his stomach than the revealed will of God, Isaac, in partnership with Jacob and Rebekah, end up robbing Esau of the blessing. And again, God's going to ultimately work, and he's going to still bless Esau to some degree in spite of this. But wow, is it going to go badly for everyone in this family. Verse 38, Esau said to his father, "Do you only have one blessing, my father? Bless me too, my father." Then Esau wept aloud. His father Isaac answered him, "Your dwelling will be away from the earth's riches." And Esau and his descendants, they went on to, like that whole region, there's a lot of desert. The desert they were in was very deserty. Your dwelling will be away from the earth's riches, away from the dew of heaven above. You will live by the sword, and you will serve your brother. But when you grow restless, you will throw off his yoke from off your neck. In other words, it's not going to go well for Esau's relationship with Jacob or for the relationship between their descendants. And again, by the end of the story, God's will is going to prevail, and God's will has prevailed already in that God said, my blessing, the line of descent of the Messiah, it's going to be through Jacob. Jacob is going to be the leader of this family. Jacob is going to be the head of the next generation. Jacob is the one who's going to be blessed by grace, and God's will has been done. The younger receives the blessing, the older will serve the younger, but at what cost? And at what unnecessary cost? Again, this is a promise that God had already given to Jacob, and yet Rebekah, and he'd given it to Jacob through his mom Rebekah. And yet they spend the whole chapter scheming and deceiving and destroying their relationship with their family members and doing damage to their family just to scheme and get what God has already promised. And as we go on to the section that we'll look at next week, the last few verses of this chapter, we see that Esau is so angry. He's so angry he's been cheated twice that when he's lying in bed at night and he just can't sleep because he's just so mad at his brother, what he comforts himself with, the warm blanket he comforts himself with, is the thought of killing his brother. Okay? And what he talks to the other servants in the house about is, oh man, I'm going to give my dad a few more days. I don't think dad's got a lot longer, but when dad's dead, Jacob's dead too. I just can't wait to kill my brother. Okay? Well, what comes out of that? Well, Rebekah catches wind of that, and all Rebekah cares about is Jacob. Jacob's the favorite. And so she's like, well, I got to protect my boy. So she comes up with a new scheme, and she's going to send Jacob away to where her family came from, to a foreign nation, many, many miles away. He's going to send him a great distance away so that he will be saved from his brother Esau, at least until Esau cools down. What Rebekah doesn't know is that that's going to be 20 years. That Jacob's going to be gone for the next 20 years. And as best we can tell from the narrative, it looks like Rebekah is dead before Jacob finally returns. So all that Rebekah wants is for her favorite son, to get all the good stuff, and so that she can just enjoy and see the blessing on her favorite son. All she wants is something God's already promised, but what she gets is that she never sees her favorite son again. And yet God's will prevails and God accomplishes his purpose. She never saw her favorite son again on earth. Why? Because she refused to simply trust God to keep his promises. She had to manipulate and scheme to get whatever she thought she needed to be happy. And that's where it just comes to the application, just kind of the what about us? There is so much that God has promised us. God hasn't necessarily promised us marriage. He hasn't necessarily promised us children. He hasn't necessarily promised us exactly the job we want or the house we want or the, whatever. But God has promised us Jesus. He has promised to place his Holy Spirit within us. He's promised to transform us from the inside out. He's promised to give us joy that we can't obtain by lying and cheating and scheming and manipulating and using other people to get the things that we think that we need. He's promised us everything that we could ever hope for. Are we ready to trust him to keep his promises? We live in this world where we're surrounded by so many other people, friends, family, distant, far, whatever. We've got all these other people in our life, and we can look at them the way that Jacob and Rebekah looked at people, even the people who were closest to them. They just saw them as pawns to be exploited in their schemes to get what they thought that they needed. And we can use people that way. We can see our siblings, we can see our our family members. We can see our classmates and coworkers as rivals that we need to one up so that we can climb the ladder, so that we can get the good stuff, so that we can be honored, so that we can be somebody. Or we can look at them as the people whom God has blessed us with, the people whom God has given us to love. Okay? And I don't have to use you to get what I want because I've got a God who has promised to take care of me. So I can just be his hands and feet and his means of blessing in the world to take care of and to love and serve you as my God serves me. That's the narrative that we're being invited into, but it is not intuitive. It's not how we tend to roll. Every day we have this propensity to think about me, me, me. What do I need? What do I want? How can I find joy? And how can I use you to help get there? There's places in Paul's writing where he sees scenarios that are just that wicked and stupid and faithless. And he just cries out in Greek, meganoita. It means, may it never be. May we not be those fools like Jacob and Rebekah and Isaac that we read about in this story. May we be the people who trust in God and hope in God and believe that he will keep his promises to give us all that we need. Amen? Let's pray. God, we just thank you for the chance to trust you this morning. God, we thank you for the chance to just receive your invitation to see other people as you see them, to see ourselves as you see us, to trust in you to care for us rather than continuing to take matters into our own hands. Whatever it is that we long for, whatever it is that we think that we need so badly today, God, may you transform us into people who believe that life and hope and joy and peace is only ultimately in you, and may we delight to trust in you. Amen.